And Rob, you know that I said years ago, I said that summer after or off season after his first season as a starter, when he threw 50 touchdowns, over 5,000 yards, won the MVP in his first year as a starter, I said he was Jordan-esque and hadn't even won anything yet. But I think that this guy, and now it's catching on. I hear Tony Romo saying this is like the Jordan era in the NBA, in the NFL, and nobody's going to win rings because of this guy. And Damian Woody saying the same thing. And I thought last night, right, watching Patrick Mahomes, now, like I said, I don't think he's the GOAT yet. I think he will be. But it reminded me of like watching Jordan, Rob. Jordan was considered by many to be the GOAT before his accomplishments had kind of warranted it. After his three-peat, when he first retired, most people were saying he's the greatest basketball player ever. Some were saying that even before he won 3. And I think it was because, and the reason I compared him to Mahomes was because Jordan, and you know, we've talked about the GOAT, Jordan had that rare combination of incredible individual dominance, statistically and otherwise, with winning big. And Mahomes, I saw, even before he had won, I thought he could do the same thing. Not that he'd win every Super Bowl he was in, but I thought he could win big and win a lot of them. And unlike Brady, particularly early in his career, in that first, time Brady won 3 out of 4 Super Bowls, Brady's numbers weren't anything special, whereas Mahomes' numbers, for the most part in his career, have been huge. And so that was why I compared him to Jordan. And I also think Jordan, Rob, remember, like Michael Jordan, at least for me, I remember thinking like, in the NBA, it used to be you down 15, and this is before the predominance of the three-point shot. But when a team was down 15 with 3 or 4 minutes left, it was over. And I felt like with Jordan, that was no longer true. Like he would come back from those types of deficits. And Mahomes, same way. Now it's to the point where it's like we said at the end of regulation. Man, you gave him the ball with 1:50 left. He's definitely tying it up. And you better hope he doesn't score a touchdown to win the game. But he's definitely getting you a field goal. And, I mean, we all know he only needed 13 seconds against Buffalo that year. So I think in those ways, that's why I feel like he's Jordan-esque. And last night did nothing but bolster that view for me.
Yeah, I think he has turned into the guy you don't want to leave the door open. If you leave the door open for him, he's going to beat you. And time again, teams have just made the wrong decision to give him those opportunities. And I think that's where, when I'm talking about coaching, even in the Buffalo thing, Chris, you know what?
They made some mistakes.
But they made mistakes in that if you kick the ball, the clock starts, right? You know what I mean? Like
if they had done like a squib, because a lot of people saying they should do a squib,
Chris. Yep. And then you got 6 seconds, or like you got to do as little as possible,
right?
Rather than let them start
6 seconds. It's just going to be hard for him.
You're gonna have to have 2 defenders run into each other for that to work. You know what I mean? And it's stuff like that, and it's the same thing. Not running the ball at the end of the game, and then you give them 1:50. Chris, 1:10 is different. Yep. It just is.
Yep. And I hear you. It's like there's no room for error.
Right. You can't allow that, and he seizes those moments. And that's what we've seen from Patrick Mahomes. I was skeptical, like that game, the way it started, and for the most part, and I just thought, man,
San Francisco had it.
Can't get anything right. They can't get anything going really, and then the muff punt. I'm a true believer of this. Special team stuff, Chris. Missing extra points. Yep. Those are the ones that come back. I've watched 1 million football games. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
and when you see those, you go, oh, that's gonna come back to haunt them. It just is the way the game is.
Well, that I'll tell you what, that's one place I will fault John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. They don't like their kicker, and look, he made 250 plus yarders
Right.
and the 27 yarder, so he was all right yesterday. But that extra point, he kicked it low.
Way low.
And Rob, that may have cost them the game because San Francisco Kansas City on their next drive, instead of getting a field goal, they would have had to go for the touchdown. And if they don't get it, now you're in control.
Right. It makes a big difference.
Yep.
That
and so for them to and you mentioned the muff punt and all that, like they looked last night or really throughout the season, like they didn't put as much emphasis on their special teams. Whereas the Kansas City has one of the best kickers in the league in Harrison Butker.
And
you
special
gotta
teams
get that
are
stuff
huge.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
No doubt. And I agree. Like we can look at Buffalo, Baltimore, and San Francisco as teams that made critical errors late.
And
that's what Mahomes took care of.
No,
like you can't. There's really no room for error when you're playing him. Because if you open the door, like you said, he's going to walk through it.
He's going to walk through it, and that's his MO. He could play bad, Chris, for 3 quarters, 3.5. Seriously.
Yeah.
And then, but he'll wind up biting you at the end. I mean, I looked at his numbers now in 4 Super Bowls, 7 touchdowns, 5 picks. But he's won 3 times. Normally, Chris, those aren't numbers that are going to get you Super Bowls. But it's when he gets,
he comes
you know what I
through
mean? Not 3.
Right.
With just 7 touchdowns. It just doesn't even sound like that would give you 3, that would give you 3 Super Bowls. But that's what he has, and it has worked. And last night was an amazing finish. And we talked about it before, having a signature moment, and he had one after not having one.
Would you say the scramble? There were a few, or would you say there was a few in overtime?
Yeah,
in the fourth quarter?
To me,
the fourth and 1 where he got the 8 yards was big.
But
another scramble.
But to throw the touchdown, Chris, to win the game, what I mean? I mean, nobody was there. There was no defender or whatever. But what if that's dropped?
Both passes, the dudes were wide open. Both touchdowns.
Right, wide open. I mean, there was nobody there.
And that's what you're talking about. Like, I get it. They were good play designs and all that. But that's where San Francisco made some mistakes.
Right.
And then again, the punt, which led to the punt fumble, led to the first touchdown. They only had to go 16 yards. I think, Rob, here, and I firmly expect Mahomes to continue getting the Super Bowls and winning Super Bowls. But it'll be interesting to watch, Rob, because like right now he is way ahead. It's still hard to imagine somebody else, him winning 7. But right now he is way ahead of Tom Brady's pace. We could say Brady won 3 in his first 4 years, right?
Which is faster than Mahomes.
Brady also run, but because of the drought, Brady won 3 in his first 13 years.
No,
you know what I'm saying? So that's where if Mahomes, does Mahomes, I don't think this will happen, but it's going to be interesting to see, does a drought follow? But even if it's not next year, the year after, and then a nice stretch, or does he continue every few years to win a Super Bowl?
Well, that's the big thing, because you can win early, and remember, after Brady cooled off in those 9 years, now they got to the Super Bowl. Remember, they lost to the Giants a couple of times and whatnot, so they were getting there.
They were still a good team,
right? But they didn't win, and there wasn't there wasn't the same Brady go-to. It was until he won again, finally, Chris. That kind of, because then he matched Joe Montana's 4. Remember, that was
I think it picked up, at least in my feeling as an individual, and I do think publicly, Rob, it really picked up when in 2007, when they got Randy Moss and he put up 50 touchdowns and, all those yards, and they were 18-0 and they didn't end up winning the Super Bowl. But that year, I remember myself thinking, oh, wow. Because Brady had never been considered like a GOAT, Rob. I mean, a lot of people still thought he was a game manager.
No, and remember, the first 3 Super Bowls were about the Patriots defense and Adam Vinatieri.
And he made some good big plays. I mean, he had 2 touchdowns in some of those games, but it was driven mainly by defense, and he managed the game and made some big plays.
And drove them down, and Vinatieri.
They finished off with field goal.
Because Chris, and this is just part of the game, obviously. But if they had a bad field goal kicker and he missed 1 or 2 of them,
that's what we were talking about with the Niners.
It changes your whole way you look at things. I mean, it's such a big part. Like people, and the other thing too, Chris, we talked about this. The running backs, like getting yards and stuff when you need it to ice games. Remember we talk about the devaluing of running backs. We saw it. Baltimore didn't use their running backs. You can't keep doing it. You won't. It'll stop you from winning.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, and I don't know that it's going to change, but we have seen the value of the running back in these, not just these playoffs, but this season. Now, I will say in Baltimore, they were down to their 3rd stringer, and he still was chewing up yards. Cleveland lost Nick Chubb, still chewing up yards. Like, I think that's kind of, unfortunately, what a lot of teams look at, Rob, is, I mean, there are a couple of guys that are real, a little different. But if we got a really good offensive line, then we can run the ball with a guy that, we're not paying that much. And even in Indianapolis with Jonathan Taylor, remember when he was hurt before he came back, his backup was getting yards. And so I hope it works out for these guys. Because another thing, Rob, is fans are going to see running backs. If you've got one of those big name running backs, fans are going to see him. And that should count for something. They're not going to see the left tackle, as important as that position is. They're going to see a quarterback, a wide receiver, a running back.
Right. That's it.
Running back should be compensated for that.